Death is a subject many people don't think about until either a loved one passes away or the individual themselves is facing death. Then one of the harsh realities to be addressed is the rather large price tag that comes with paying for a casket and then a burial plot and maybe even renting a facility for the memorial service. It all adds up to more than one might guess. And if the individual that dies has not prepaid for those arrangements, the surprise expense on the family often leads to this search for more affordable options. And so the question is often asked by those who want to know what the Bible says, is cremation an option I can consider? And what they mean by that is there anything in the Bible that speaks to this question? Is there a command of any kind about how we are to dispose of a dead body? Or is there an example of cremation in the Bible with a reaction from God, positive or negative? Maybe there's a principle. Is there a principle that might apply here? Or is this simply a matter of judgment, left to each individual and each family to decide? I would like to start by asking you to think with me about the various customs of various cultures. If you think about the bodies of Egyptian pharaohs, they were wrapped in a process known as mummification, and then typically placed in an ornate tomb made of stone or something beautiful to look at, and many of them placed in the pyramids. Their bodies were not buried in the ground. And this is not much different from what we read in the Bible. From Abraham to Jesus, we read about bodies being wrapped and then placed in a cave. You think about times of war or times of disease and plague. It was common for bodies to be piled up in mass and then burned to prevent sickness from spreading. There are places where the ground is so muddy and marsh-like, maybe because that land is below sea level, that bodies are not buried underground. Rather, they're placed in above-ground containers called sepulchres. If you just do a little research on this, you'll find a variety of customs for disposing of the dead. I did, however, notice a common theme that I found very interesting among those customs, and that was the belief that people were sending the body of their loved one to the afterlife. When I read about the Vikings, specifically a Viking soldier, they would place his body on a small boat. They would place his belongings on that boat. They would even put food on that boat and then send it off into the ocean. I also read about something called sky burial, where the body is carried up to the top of a very high mountain and then just left, exposed for nature to take its course. I was recently at a hospital with a dear Christian woman. Her husband had just unexpectedly died, and I accompanied her to go see his body. And when we walked into that room, as you can imagine, it was an incredibly heavy and sad feeling to see that lifeless body, and you can just imagine her sorrow. But she quickly said to me, "I don't want to stay here. My husband isn't in this body anymore." This was a Christian woman who knew her husband was now with the Lord. She knew what the Bible said. The body without the spirit is dead. The Bible also says, "Then the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it." The Bible teaches us it is appointed for men to die once, and after this the judgment. And after the unavoidable experience of death, the body returns to dust and the spirit goes to God. But that isn't the end of the story. The Bible says God isn't done with the body, which is probably why conscientious people ask the question of whether cremation is scriptural or not. While the body will decay and return to dust, Jesus said that there will come a time when all who are in the graves will hear his voice and come forth. Those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of condemnation. Paul then elaborates on this in his first letter to the church in Corinth, when he says that the body that is sown in corruption, the body is raised in incorruption. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. There is a natural body and there is a spiritual body. Here's the point. Our current natural bodies are weak. They're corruptible right now. But they will be changed in some way. God is going to resurrect them and change them into a body fit for eternity. So it really doesn't matter if you burn in a building, if that's how you die. If you're eaten by a shark, or if you're dismembered in a horrific car accident. God can and will change the body, everyone's body, on the day of judgment into whatever he wants it to be. And we don't have to worry about God's ability to do what he said he's going to do when that time comes. So I ask you, does it really matter if a body is intentionally cremated or if it decays naturally over time? I personally cannot find anything in the Bible that gives us any impression that cremation is against the will of God or that it some way dishonors the body that God made. God actually commanded in the law of Moses that certain crimes come with the penalty of being burned by fire. God consumed Nadab and Abihu with fire. He consumed Sodom and Gomorrah with fire. Now, I know these are examples of individuals who were disobedient, but I reference them to show that the judgment of fire will not prevent God from being able to resurrect those bodies on the judgment day. In 1 Samuel 31, we learn about King Saul and his death, his son Jonathan's death. We're told that Israel burned their bodies and that their bones were buried in a town named Jabesh. There is no commentary in the Bible about whether God approved or disapproved of this. It's just stated as a matter of fact. There's no mention anywhere in the Bible about the disposition of the body having an impact on the eternal destination of the spirit. Think with me about Joseph. According to Genesis 50, the children of Israel placed his body in a coffin, and then they carried that coffin out of Egypt 400 years later. Then they carried it around the wilderness for 40 years, and then finally buried it in the land of Canaan, the promised land, in a city called Shechem. Joseph asked them to do this before he died, and according to the Bible, they buried the bones of Joseph, the bones. You see, the body had turned to dust over those 400 plus years, and it was only the bones that remained for burial. Here's the bottom line. God said to the first man, Adam, "In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread until you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you shall return." Perhaps we're asking the wrong question with regard to cremation. In many places around the world, the body is often preceded, the burial is preceded by an embalming process, which is an effort to actually preserve the body after death. Then it is placed in a sealed casket as if to further preserve and protect it. So when you think about it, neither cremation nor embalming is a natural return to dust. So on this topic, the Bible is silent, and that is meaningful. It would, in fact, be sinful for us to make rules and bind traditions where God has not. For the Christian, our perspective is very different. The body and this life is temporary. God has something wonderful prepared for those who love Him and for those who follow and obey His Son, Jesus Christ. So the question of cremation, while it's often an emotion-based question, I want you to please do whatever you think is best for you and your family, and know that God is not prescriptive on this topic.